Arizona Fall League is one of the winter baseball leagues that happens after the minor league season. You've seen a lot of big names coming out of that league. Like I think in 2018, there was Pete Alonso had like a huge season. And you look at some of the names of the players on the roster. I was a little bit surprised here because it said only 16 of the 100 of the top 100 prospects are going to be playing in this. Now, for the top 20, I'm going to get into the roster itself. For the top 20 is a little bit deceptive of a stat because it's like 6, 13, 18, and 20. Unfortunately, none of the top 5 prospects are going to be playing in this. I think this may not include the players that were on the last that were just drafted. So they may not be ranked. So there's a chance that if the rankings change, that there's going to be more players that are included on those rosters, or if there's any changes that also could take an effect. I mean, obviously the big name here, we had number 44. We got Jason Dominguez. He's going to be playing. Just looking down this list, I mean, Henry Davis, who I believe was the first round or the first overall pick, not this last draft, but the previous draft for the Pirates, he's going to be there. That's a big name. Let's see, Jordan Lawler for the D-backs. He was kind of one of the big players that was coming out of 2021 Bowman, I believe, or 2022. I forget off the top of my head, but he was one of the big names coming out of a recent Bowman product, kind of one of the big prospects. Jordan Walker for the Cardinals, obviously going to be another big name. For the most part, I'd say that people probably Brennan Davis is another kind of prospect that has sort of been in the Cubs system for a little bit, has been a name that people are excited about in sports cards, hasn't really gotten the call up to the majors yet, so we're still sort of waiting. Dominguez, he was in 2020 Bowman, he had a very sort of interesting Bowman experience when he first started coming out of products, because that 2020 season, he was the big name that was going to be in Bowman, but like that was obviously when sort of the season was shutting down because obviously 2020 and the pandemic and everything, super, super wild stuff there. But like he was coming out of 2020 Bowman, and that was actually the first year that they had the first editions for Bowman Chrome. So Bowman Chrome first edition came out before the regular Bowman Chrome came out. I don't think there was delayed, but it came out after first edition. And there was some speculation that actually the Bowman first edition, the Chrome autographs, a lot of them were smudged. And this could obviously be cherry picking because I think, people are only going to post the autographs that are smudged. They're not going to be like, hey, my autograph wasn't smudged or whatever. But it was kind of interesting because there were like numbered autographs that were coming out of first edition that are like, there's I think there was a couple greens that were like, there was 100 of them. So like they had 100 green autographs that were coming out of that first edition. So I think one of the interesting things with Jason Dominguez and with that 2020 Bowman first edition kind of crowd is that like, it sort of changes the landscape of that Bowman product, I think, a little bit. And it may not change it right away, but I think down the road, maybe once Jason Dominguez kind of comes up, and especially playing for the Yankees, I think he didn't play as well in his first season, which I would just honestly chalk that up to like 2020. I think anybody who kind of played poorly in that 2020 season it was just a weird year. Like I think, and especially because the minor leagues were just canceled altogether. Like they didn't even have any season at all. So like a lot of prospects missed a whole season's worth of, rookie ball or AAA or AA or single A or wherever they would have fallen in that category. But so once Jason Dominguez kind of gets the call up, I think it's going to be very interesting to see sort of what people think is like the first Bowman that people want. Like, I think it's obviously, if I'm ranking them, the first Bowman Chrome card is going to be number one, but then the paper and then the paper and then the first edition paper, I think are going to be in the conversation they're going to be closer in price than maybe people think. And it's unfortunate because it does switch the landscape sort of that first Bowman card, because like, who knows how many of those first Bowman first edition cards there are paper, because the Chromes were only autographs. They didn't have a Bowman Chrome first edition. It was just Bowman paper first edition. And that was in a totally different product as well. I think you could buy packs or you could buy them in boxes. And it actually, when it first came out, I think the Topps website crashed, I believe. And that was like so long ago, honestly. It was like 2 years ago at this point. But it's wild. And I don't know exactly what's going to happen with those first edition cards. Like, is that going to be the card that people look at and they say, this is the one, now this is the one that I do want, versus the regular Bowman paper, which people, I think you could probably buy Jason Dominguez Bowman paper cards for like $5. I haven't looked up the exact price, but like even the Bowman Chrome card, to be honest, like Dominguez didn't have the best season. He has had a better season this past year. He was in the futures game that happened over All-Star weekend. I think he hit a home run, and that's how the team won, based off of the home run that he hit. But then you have like I said, Brennan Davis. I think he was in 2019 Bowman. But here's kind of the thing. It's a little bit interesting to me, like prospects and how prospecting goes within sports cards. And Josh from Cardboard Chronicles, who is from Card Ladder, I think I want to talk about this soon as well. He put out a video. Well, he put out on an Instagram story, and it was a bunch of Instagram story slides, basically. And it was football, it wasn't baseball, but I think the comparison there ends up working out, where he was comparing the top players from the past two drafts, comparing them to players who are in the league now. And the prices they're way different. Like, I think he was comparing Joe Burrow and Matthew Stafford. And if you look at like Joe Burrow's National Treasures versus Matthew Stafford's National Treasures, or any of the base cards, like there's such a huge difference that I wonder what's going to happen if those players, like if a Joe Burrow, like if Joe Burrow, for example, doesn't pan out, and even if he does, like even if he becomes Matthew Stafford, like Matthew Stafford, I think since he won the Super Bowl, I think he's a Hall of Famer now, to be completely honest. Like, I think before it was probably arguable if he was going to make the Hall of Fame or not. But like so now I think that he's won that Super Bowl, he is going to be a Hall of Famer. But like his card price floor is so much lower than Joe Burrow. Like, I have a lot of thoughts on this kind of in general. Like, is the floor of modern sports cards, like of the modern sets, like certain modern sets, I don't think necessarily like base cards or anything along those lines, but like certain modern sets like National Treasures, or, even Flawless or Immaculate for football, like are those prices are they just higher? Like, are they going to be higher for quarterbacks to get into those types of cards versus, a Matthew Stafford? I think, I forget who was talking about it, but I know someone was talking about like Bo Jackson recently, and saying like, Bo Jackson, his card values can't really go up as much as someone like that's in the league now. And I don't know if there's necessarily a good comparison for Bo Jackson, kind of one of the craziest players of all time, to be honest. But like, his card prices they probably won't go down significantly, but they'll probably stay pretty steady. We had seen, some players, I think after this last kind of drop in a lot of the markets, we're seeing sort of a lot of players sort of stay flat. But overall, I think if you're comparing players who are rookies or prospects that are coming up compared to these players who are established in the league now, you are definitely seeing like a wide gap. But I wonder if that floor is just what the floor is now for these players, or if the floor is honestly, if it's going to get down to like where those Stafford, like if whatever sixth grade quarterback, when he becomes, the Joe Burrow, the number one overall pick, like, are we going to be comparing his cards to Joe Burrow and saying like, if does the Joe Burrow card drop to the Matthew Stafford price? Or are we going to just be looking at like Joe Burrow staying steady if he kind of goes on to have a good career, obviously, but like then comparing him to whoever the next prospect is, like, is that prospect's cards going to be that much significantly higher than the Joe Burrow? And I think when it comes to like baseball, it's almost exactly the same. Like, you could compare Jason Dominguez prices to like, Bobby Witt or Mookie Betts or any of these players who are in the league. And Bobby Witt's an example of sort of similar to Jason Dominguez, but like in the league now, obviously. But like, if you're comparing, Jason Dominguez even to a player like Albert Pujols, like, you could find cards that are very similarly priced. And if you were to find a card that is sort of in the same realm of conversation of like, this is the card that you want for this player, I'm sure the prices are either close to the same, or Jason Dominguez might even be a little bit higher, to be honest. So it's like the prospecting conversation, I think is a very interesting one, and one that I follow a lot of, because I also feel sort of, I feel not necessarily responsible, but it's like I love talking about prospects, to be honest. Like, they're very interesting to watch. So it's like, is the conversation around prospects the reason why those card prices are so high, or is it the reverse? Like, are the card prices high because the prospect has a lot of potential? I think it's sort of a combination of both. Like, because like I said, prospects are just, they're interesting to talk about, and it's fun to kind of be excited for a player to come up into the league and kind of show their potential. But then, like, once that happens, people then just kind of move on to the next prospect. So does that happen to a player like Jason Dominguez once he gets in the league, like, or Bobby Witt, like, once he plays another couple seasons, like, or, Julio Rodriguez is another kind of example of a rookie. But like, I wonder where, like, what's going to be the floor for some of these players? Like, is a Jason Dominguez versus a Mookie Betts, like, is the floor of the Jason Dominguez just going to be higher throughout his career compared to the Mookie Betts? Or is the Mookie Betts still, like, undervalued? Like, that's kind of one of the other things I was, years ago, Mookie Betts was extremely undervalued. Now I think he's properly valued as in terms of in the sports card world, but he's like one of the best players in the league, if not, if not number two, or if not more popular than or a better player than Mike Trout, to be completely honest. But like, the prospecting conversation, it's never ending, because there's always a new prospect that's going to come up, and it's something I'll talk about on the show and in videos, but it's always something where I want people to